Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Granger, one of the most popular marksmen in the game. In this video, I will also discuss how Granger works in full details, which includes his passive, skills, builds, emblems, along with some tips and guide on how to use him in a match. So, without further ado, let's get started with the video. Granger's revamp has finally arrived on the official server, bringing exciting changes to his gameplay and playstyle. So, whether you're a seasoned marksman main, or someone eager to master this revamped hero, I've got you covered. And just like any other hero, mastering Granger starts with a deep understanding of his revamped abilities, particularly his passive. So, let's get started with his passive, but in order to understand his passive ability, you will need to understand his first skill first, and that's kind of confusing. So I will explain both his passive and first skill together, so that it won't be confusing. With the help of his new passive, Granger now uses energy on his abilities. And both his gun and cannon are powered by demonic energy. And both his weapons have a starting energy of 800. And you can see his energy bar right below his health bar. And his energy bar is split into two. And the white energy on the left is for his first skill. And the red energy on the right is for his ultimate skill. And since Granger is now using energy, his first skill and ultimate skill do not have a cooldown. Meaning you can keep using his first and ultimate skill without having to wait for its cooldown. But even though his first skill and ultimate skill does not have a cooldown, they still consume energy. And if you run out of energy, you won't be able to use his first and ultimate skill. And the way his energy works is completely different compared to other heroes who use energy, like Fanny and Ling. And what separates Granger's energy from other heroes' energy is that Granger does not benefit from the purple buff. And the purple buff does not provide him with energy cooldown reduction even if you obtain the purple buff. But the good thing about Granger's demonic energy is that you can permanently increase his energy. And the only way to increase his energy is by killing minions and creeps, along with enemy heroes. For every creep or minions you kill, you will permanently gain 6 energy on both your gun and cannon. And you can see the amount of energy you have on the screen below. It's pretty much similar to Aldous' stacks. And for each hero kill or assist you get, you will permanently gain 12 energy on both your weapons. Meaning you can permanently increase your overall energy by killing minions, creeps, or heroes, which is huge. So your main goal when using Granger should be killing the enemies, or farming the minions, so that you will be able to increase his energy. And the more energy you have, the more often you will be able to use your skills. And that is pretty much how his new passive works. And as for his first skill, it's still the same as the old Granger. So I don't think I need to explain how his first skill works, since it's still the same. The only difference is that you can now spam your first skill without having to wait for its cooldown. Now, let's talk about his second skill. With the help of his second skill, Granger uses his Demon Hunter agility to dash in the target direction. And upon using his second skill, 15% of your energy will be restored. Meaning you can use this skill to restore your energy. And you can also use this skill along with your first skill. And hitting an enemy or minion with your first skill will lower the cooldown of this skill, which is pretty good in my opinion. Now, let's talk about his ultimate skill. With the help of his ultimate, Granger fires his cannon in the target direction, dealing 250 physical damage to the enemy's hit. And if you try to move while using his ultimate, Granger will leap and roll, allowing you to jump past those walls. You can use this skill to fire the enemies from a safe distance, but you might need a little practice when using his ult, as it is really easy to miss. His ultimate is pretty much similar to Novaria's second skill. What's good about his ultimate is that you can use it to kill enemies from a safe distance, and even if you're unable to kill the enemies, you can still gain assist by dealing damage to the enemies. And gaining assist will also increase your energy permanently by 12. And if you're finding it hard to hit the enemies with your ult, then you could turn on the aim panning mode in the settings. And that way, you will have a wider view of the area, increasing your chances of hitting the enemies. Aim panning mode is really helpful when using Granger, especially when you're fighting with enemies that are out of your vision. Now, let's talk about his builds and emblems. For his builds, you must prioritize buying items that will increase your overall burst capabilities, and for that, this is the best build for him. And I didn't add Endless Battle because it's not as effective as before. After his revamp, you would usually find yourself spamming his first and ultimate skill without using his basic attack. But if you still want to use Endless Battle, then you could also go for this build. But I'd recommend you to go for this build only when you're using him in the side lane. But if you're gonna use him as the jungler, then it's better to go for the first build. Now, let's talk about his emblems and talents. For his emblem, the Assassin emblem is the most suitable emblem for Granger. And for his first talent, go for Rapture. Rapture will provide you with +5 adaptive penetration. And for his second talent, go for Seasoned Hunter if you are using him as the jungler. As Seasoned Hunter will increase your damage by 15% when taking the Lord or Turtle. But if you're playing him as the side laner, you could go for Weapon Master. And for his core talent, it's recommended to go for Lethal Ignition when playing him as the Hyper. And if you're using him as the side laner, then I'd recommend you to take Impure Rage or Quantum Charge. Take Impure Rage if you want more damage, but if you want more mobility, you should take Quantum Charge. Now, let's talk about his gameplay and how to use him in a match. In this video, I'll be explaining how to use him as the jungler. But if you want me to make a video on how to use him as the side laner, then make sure to let me know in the comments. I know most people prefer him as the side laner after his revamp, since killing minions and creeps could increase your energy stats. But in my opinion, going for the Hyper isn't as bad, since if you use him as the Hyper, you will have higher chances of using Granger to his full potential. Plus, killing heroes will also give you more energy compared to minions and creeps. But anyways, during the start of the game, make sure to unlock your first skill first, as it is your main source of damage. And I started with the red buff, because the gold lane is on the top lane. And starting with the red buff will allow me to gank the gold lane as soon as I reach level 4. But if the gold lane is in the bottom lane, then I would recommend you to start with the blue buff. Remember, as the jungler, you should always prioritize ganking the gold lane as soon as you reach level 4. As ganking the gold lane is the easiest, plus marksmen are usually the weakest during the early game, and you have the highest chances of killing them, so make sure to keep that in mind. And after you finish ganking the gold lane, you should try waiting for the turtle. And once the turtle gets spawned, you should ask your teammates to help you secure the turtle. And once you finish securing the turtle, make sure to check the minimap and see who's struggling and getting ganked by the enemies. And in my case, our fighter was doing just fine, and it was our marksman who was struggling, so I will help him instead. Remember, as the jungler, you must be able to make good decisions during the early game, as the early game usually decides the outcome of the mid-game. And as for how to use his skills, you must wait and see which way the enemy is going to move before using your first skill. And once you use your first skill, you must move along with the enemy in the same direction. Most of his damage comes from his first skill, and if you don't aim and use your first skill properly, then you will have a hard time killing the enemies. So I'd recommend you to try practicing how to use his first skill before using him in a rank match. And when it comes to his ultimate, if the enemies are near, then feel free to auto-tap your ult. But if the enemies are running away or far away from you, then you must aim your ult, and try predicting which direction the enemies will run. There's honestly no trick or easy methods when it comes to his first skill and ultimate skill, so you must try practicing on your own. And I'd highly advise you to save your second skill during a fight, as his second skill has a long cooldown. So you must only use his second skill for repositioning during a fight, running away, or when chasing the enemies. So, your main priorities during the early game should be farming, reaching level 4, ganking the gold lane, securing the turtle, and helping your teammates by rotating around the map depending on the situation. It's generally recommended to help your marksman the most, But if your fighter is doing better, then I would recommend you to try helping your fighter more often, all while still helping your marksman. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. During the mid-game, you should have at least one or two of your core items. And this is the stage where Granger starts to shine the most. And you should start joining teamfights, and try helping your teammates by ganking their lane as much as you can. And remember, you must always rotate depending on the situation, and you must never favor one teammate and abandon the other, as that is the worst thing you can do as the hyper. Most of the times, people will play with their friends, and they will only rotate and help their friends, even if you play better than their friend, completely forgetting your existence. And that is the most annoying and stupid thing you can do as the hyper. So please don't be like those players, and instead try helping everyone on your team. And once you find the teammate who is playing the best, you must try focusing on them, all while still helping your other teammates every now and then. And whenever there is a fight, never be greedy for kills, as being greedy would lead to an early death. You must always remember that even though Granger can deal a lot of damage, he is still a marksman at the end of the day, and the enemies will easily be able to one-shot you if they catch you off guard. So always make sure to check the bushes and mini-map, so that you will be able to avoid being ambushed by the enemies. I'd recommend you to use your first skill to check the bushes before entering them. And whenever you take a fight with the enemies, always make sure to keep some distance between you and the enemies. Because if you're not careful, the enemies will burst you down before you realize. So you should learn how to take fights while maintaining a safe distance from the enemies. So, your mid-game priorities should be helping your teammates, by joining teamfights and taking objectives like turtle and turrets whenever possible. And you should try getting as many kills as you can, without overextending and being greedy. Now, let's talk about his late game. During the late game, Granger's damage gets increased along with his energy stats. And you should easily be able to melt the enemy's mage and marksman at this point. And whenever there is a teamfight, you should always make sure that you can see all the enemies in the map. Because most of the times, one or two of the enemies will hide in a nearby bush right before a teamfight, and they will specifically target you first. So you should make sure to be careful during teamfights, and it's recommended to wait for your tank or fighter to engage before joining the teamfight. Always remember that timing and positioning is the key to winning during the late game, so always make sure to wait for the right opportunity to strike. And since Granger is squishy and easy to kill, I'd recommend you to always let your tank or fighter start the teamfight. And only after that should you join the teamfight. And remember, Granger is weak against heroes like Franco, Kufra, Minsafar, Cho, and Saber. As these heroes can easily get close to Granger, and if the enemies get close to you, then you're pretty much a dead meat. So make sure to always keep some distance between you and the enemies. And if the enemies have dash or blink abilities, then you should keep extra distance between you and them. And aside from teamfights, you must also prioritize taking important objectives like Lord and turrets. Remember, taking the Lord will always increase the chances of being able to end the game. And you should also keep in mind that you should never rotate alone during the late game, especially if the enemies have heroes that can one-shot you. So, what do you think about Granger? In my opinion, the old Granger was more smooth to use, compared to the revamped Granger. But I guess his new passive makes up for that. Make sure to hit the like button on the video, if you have watched this far. And subscribe to my channel if you're new. I make tutorials and informative videos about the game. Thank you for watching.